Alright, today I want to take a couple minutes to do a couple of videos here regarding small guns and large guns, and I want to talk about the difference between the pluses and minuses of carrying a large gun and the pluses and minuses of carrying a small gun. Now when you talk about carrying a small gun, a tiny gun like the SIG P238, there are benefits and negative. There are pluses and minuses to that too. There are positives, there are things that are good about it, and there are things that are bad about it. Now, the things that are good about it is easy to conceal. I mean, you can conceal these on you easily. Easy to carry. They're lightweight. You can get ones much lighter weight than this P238. So you can carry guns that you don't even notice they're there. You can even pocket carry some small guns. I mean, you can go down to sea camps. So size. Size is a big plus for carrying a small gun like this. And that's actually the biggest plus for these guns, is the size. So when you're really looking at them, there's not much you can say in the positive category other than they're small, they're easy to carry. Now, one way you can look at that though to make it seem more attractive is a gun that you'll actually carry, because it's easy to carry, is worth 10 larger caliber guns that you don't. If I had this 380 on me, this 380 does me much more good than a 44 Magnum sitting at home on my shelf, or even a 45 Colt that's sitting in my car, because I don't want to carry it into the mall because it's too bulky and too easily seen. So the biggest advantages of guns like this is they turn even the most timid carrier into someone who actually carries their gun. So these are always great for guys who don't want to commit to a big gun but still want to defend themselves. Small guns have it all over big guns for that. Now when you want to talk the positives, you have to talk the negatives. Now the negatives about small guns. There are a lot of times they're harder to grip, they're harder to wield, they're harder to shoot accurately. That's not the case with most. This little P238 and like my Walther PPK are extremely easy to shoot and extremely accurate. My P290 is very accurate. Now another disadvantage to a small gun like this is capacity. You're usually looking at 6, 7 rounds, maybe 8, but usually in that 6 to 7 round category. So you're talking about needing to reload if you ever need to shoot more than that. But you can counter that disadvantage there by realizing that in 99% of cases, easily 99%, let's just say the vast majority of cases, 1 or 2 shots, 3 shots at the most, and you're going to be done with what you're doing. Running gun battles are just not things that civilians get into. Now, if you're in someplace different than where we live here in the United States, that might be different. But here, you don't get into running gun battles. Most of the time, just the sight of a gun is enough to end a conflict, and if it's not, 1 or 2 shots is going to do it. So I've never really heard of anyone needed to reload during a fight or a self-defense situation. So this is probably not going to be that much of a disadvantage to you. You can easily weigh out that disadvantage. Another disadvantage is caliber. Now when you go down to guns like this, you go down to smaller calibers. It's just the reality. They're smaller, they can't have chamber as big around as like a 45 or a 44 Magnum can. Now that's also easy to kind of counter a little bit too, because it's not like with carrying a big gun where you can't fight physics. I mean, they're just big, they're easier, they're harder to carry, they're heavier to carry, they're harder to conceal. You can't dispel that. You can't just get rid of that. That's just the truth. You are going to have to change some of the way you do things just to be able to carry them. But with a small gun, when you're looking at caliber, there's a lot of debate on whether caliber makes that big of a difference in a self-defense situation. There's all kinds of debates about whether secondary wound cavities matter, whether secondary tissue damage from energy matters, or whether it doesn't, or whether it's just the penetration that matters. You could debate that all day long. So if you're one of the people that just wants penetration and just wants a few rounds on you, you can dispel that caliber issue too. And plus, they don't just come in little calibers like 380 to get a small gun. This is my Kahr MK40, another tiny gun, 40 Smith & Wesson, my preferred carry round. So I can carry this small gun and still have a very powerful round. Now you will lose something because of the barrel length, but it is a good, powerful gun and a small gun. Makes it a little harder to manipulate, a little harder to wield because it is small and it's powerful, but it's a good heavy gun. But that does, when you get up into a heavy caliber like this in a small gun, you kind of negate your advantage from weight because it gets heavy. And it also gets a little bigger. It's not as tiny as, say, the P238. Another option where you have a good caliber, but a small package is a roar ball. I mean, it's a 9mm, so you're going down to 9mm, which a lot of people consider the minimum. But it's tiny. It's just about as small as the P238. It's about as small as most of the little 380s you can buy. Really good gun, Really expensive though, a little prohibitive to having for most people, a little prohibitive to carry. I don't even like to carry it for fear of damaging it because it's a very expensive gun. But higher caliber, it is a small capacity, but it is a little harder to wield, a little harder to trigger than a P238 or something like that. And also, you got to remember when you're going down into these higher calibers, but in these tiny little barrels, don't fool yourself by comparing the ballistics from a 380 out of a small barrel to the ballistics of a 9mm out of a 4-inch barrel. Always make sure you're paying attention to the barrel length being like in the 2.5 inch range. But if you're not, you're really comparing apples to oranges there. You need to make sure you compare your 9mm ammo in this size of a barrel because it loses quite a bit. When you take that into account, quite often you're seeing 380 ammo that's made for short barrels just performing just about as well as 9mm out of a 2-inch barrel. And of course with a small gun you also have the option of the old revolver, the old J-frame revolver. Now you're really taking out the whole factor of caliber because this was a 357 Magnum. I've never met a man alive that's going to stand up to a 357 Magnum. Most four-legged animals aren't going to stand up to a 357 Magnum. So, you know, only thing about this, small caliber, or a small capacity, slower reload times. But, like I say, how often are you going to need to reload? So in the end, small guns have their advantages. I mean, like I say, they're easy to carry, they are lightweight, they encourage people to carry that wouldn't normally carry. Now they do have their disadvantages, like I said, caliber, which is easily, not always the case, capacity, which may not be that relevant, but you may be one of the people who wants more capacity. And you know, that's about it as far as the negatives for carrying the guns. I mean, like I say, they won't have as big a caliber, they don't have as much capacity as a larger gun, but the one thing that does bother me about small guns that I don't dispel as easily as the others is that sometimes they're not that recognizable when you pull them. You don't have that immediate, oh my god, he's got a gun factor when you pull this. If I reach in my pocket and pull this out, someone's going to be like, is he threatening me with his wallet? Is he threatening me with a cigarette lighter? Is that a cell phone? What is it? And if they don't immediately recognize gun, they may not recognize it before they're on you. So the major disadvantage of a small gun to me is recognition and intimidation. It just doesn't, it's not as much there with this as it is with a bigger gun. So in the end, small guns are one of my preferences. I love small guns. I carry a J-frame daily. I have big guns. I could carry big guns. This is not from someone who's just justifying the fact that I only have small guns. I have an option, and I choose usually small guns, J-frames and smaller. Now, if I was going into combat or going hunting or going camping or hiking where I'm liable to run into bigger animals, yeah, that'll be different. But for everyday carry, the pluses and minuses of small guns add up to a very positive thing for me.